The gunshot echoed through Red Rock Canyon just as Whitmore spotted the flash of blue fabric caught between two massive boulders, and his first thought was that someone had thrown away perfectly good calico, until he saw the pale hand reaching desperately toward the sky. Cole pulled his horse to a stop and dismounted in one fluid motion, his boots hitting the dusty canyon floor with a soft thud. The August heat of 1878 bore down on him like a physical weight as he approached the narrow crevice between the rocks. He had been tracking a stray calf for the better part of 3 hours, and this detour was the last thing he needed, but his conscience would not let him ride past someone in trouble. "Hello," he called out, his voice bouncing off the canyon walls. "Can you hear me?" A weak voice responded, barely audible over the afternoon wind whistling through the rocks. "Please help me. I have been stuck here since yesterday morning." Cole dropped to his knees and peered into the gap. A young woman with dark hair plastered to her sweat-soaked face looked up at him with eyes that held both fear and desperate hope. Her dress was torn in several places, and he could see scratches and bruises on her exposed arms. "Hold on, miss. I am going to get you out of there," Cole said, already assessing the situation. The woman had somehow wedged herself between two large sandstone boulders, probably while trying to find shade or escape from something. The space was too narrow for him to simply pull her out, and any wrong move could cause the rocks to shift and crush her. "You are the answer to my prayers," she whispered, her voice cracking with emotion. "I thought I was going to die here." Cole felt something shift in his chest at her words, but he pushed the feeling aside and focused on the problem at hand. "What is your name, miss?" "Nora. Nora Garrett," she replied, wincing as she tried to shift her position. "I was traveling with a wagon train from San Elizario to El Paso when I wandered off to look for my mother's locket. I dropped it somewhere along the trail, and I thought I saw it gleaming in the sun over here. But I slipped and fell between these rocks, and I have not been able to get out since." "Well, Miss Garrett, my name is Cole Whitmore, and I am going to need you to stay very still while I figure out how to free you." He stood and circled the boulders, looking for any weakness in their formation. The rocks were massive, easily weighing several tons each, but there was a smaller stone wedged underneath that seemed to be keeping them at their current angle. Cole returned to his horse and retrieved his rope and a sturdy branch he had picked up earlier. He fashioned a simple lever system, wedging the branch under the smaller rock and tying the rope around it for extra pulling power. It was risky, and if he miscalculated, he could make things worse, but the woman did not have much time left. The canyon floor reached temperatures well over 100 degrees in August, and she had already been without water for over a day. "Miss Garrett, when I tell you to, I need you to push yourself backward as hard as you can. Do you understand?" "Yes," Nora said, her voice steadier now that help had arrived. "I understand." Cole positioned himself at the lever and began to apply pressure. The wood creaked ominously, and for a moment nothing happened. Then, slowly, the smaller rock began to shift. The gap between the two larger boulders widened by perhaps an inch, but it might be enough. "Now, Miss Garrett, push now." Nora screamed with effort as she threw her weight backward. Her dress tore further as she scraped against the rough stone, but she was moving. Cole maintained pressure on the lever, every muscle in his body straining against the weight of the rock. Just when he thought his makeshift tool would snap, Nora tumbled free and collapsed onto the canyon floor, gasping and sobbing with relief. Cole released the lever and rushed to her side. She was badly dehydrated, her lips cracked and bleeding, her skin hot to the touch despite the shade. He scooped her into his arms without asking permission and carried her to where his horse waited patiently. Setting her down gently against a larger shaded rock face, he retrieved his canteen and helped her take small sips of water. "Slow now," he cautioned as she tried to gulp the liquid. "Too much too fast will make you sick." Nora nodded and forced herself to drink slowly, though he could see the effort it took. Her hands trembled as they wrapped around the canteen, and tears began to stream down her dirty cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered between sips. "Thank you so much. I prayed and prayed that someone would find me, and then I heard your horse, and I thought surely God had sent you to save me." Cole felt his face warm, though whether from the heat or her words he could not say. "I am just glad I came this way looking for that damned calf." "Pardon my language, miss." A weak smile crossed her face. "I think the circumstances excuse a little rough language, Mr. Whitmore." He smiled back, and for the first time he really looked at her. Despite her disheveled state, she was beautiful in a way that made his breath catch. Her eyes were a remarkable shade of green, like the desert after a rare rain, and there was an intelligence and strength in them that spoke of a woman who would not easily give up. Her dark hair, though tangled and dirty, fell in waves past her shoulders, and the bone structure of her face suggested both delicacy and determination. "Can you stand?" he asked, pushing aside thoughts that had no business in his head at this moment. "We need to get you back to San Elizario. You need proper care and rest." "I think so," Nora said, but when she tried to rise, her legs buckled beneath her. Cole caught her before she could fall, and once again he felt that strange sensation in his chest, like something clicking into place that he had not known was missing. "All right then, we will do this a different way," he said, trying to keep his voice steady and professional. He lifted her onto his horse, then swung up behind her, keeping one arm securely around her waist. She leaned back against him, either from weakness or trust, and he could feel her heartbeat through the thin fabric of her torn dress. The ride back to San Elizario took nearly 2 hours, and Cole used the time to learn more about his unexpected passenger. Nora told him about her family, about how her parents had died in a cholera outbreak in St. Louis 6 months ago, and how she had joined her aunt and uncle in their journey to El Paso, where they hoped to start a new life running a general store. "They must be worried sick," Nora said, her voice tinged with guilt. "When I did not return to the wagon train, they probably thought I had been taken by bandits or worse." "We will send word ahead," Cole assured her. "San Elizario has a telegraph office. Your family will know you are safe before the day is through." As they talked, Cole found himself drawn deeper into conversation with her. Nora was well educated, having attended a finishing school in St. Louis before her parents' deaths. She spoke 3 languages, could play the piano, and had radical ideas about women's education that both surprised and intrigued him. But more than her accomplishments, it was her spirit that captured his attention. Despite her ordeal, she maintained a sense of humor and optimism that he found remarkable. "What about you, Mr. Whitmore?" she asked as they crested a ridge that gave them a view of the valley below. "What is your story?" Cole hesitated. He was not accustomed to talking about himself, especially to strangers, but something about Nora made him want to open up. "Not much to tell, really. I have been working at the Double R Ranch for the past 5 years. Before that, I drifted around a bit, trying to figure out where I belonged." "And have you? Figured out where you belong, I mean." "I thought I had," Cole said quietly. "But lately, I have been feeling restless again, like there is something more out there waiting for me, and I just have not found it yet." Nora was silent for a moment, then she said softly, "Maybe you just found it." Cole's arm tightened around her waist involuntarily, and he felt her settle more comfortably against him. Neither of them spoke for the rest of the journey, but the silence was companionable, filled with unspoken possibilities. San Elizario appeared on the horizon just as the sun began its descent toward the western mountains. The small town was a dusty collection of adobe buildings and wooden structures clustered around a central plaza dominated by an old Spanish mission. Cole guided his horse through the main street, drawing curious stares from the townspeople who recognized him, but not his passenger. He stopped in front of the doctor's house, a neat adobe structure with a hand-painted sign that read Dr. Samuel Martinez, physician. Before Cole could dismount, the door opened, and a middle-aged Mexican man with kind eyes and a neat mustache stepped out. "Cole Whitmore, what have you brought me today?" Dr. Martinez asked, his English tinged with a slight accent. Then he saw Nora and his expression turned serious. "Bring her inside quickly." Cole carried Nora into the cool interior of the doctor's home, following Martinez into a clean examination room. He laid her gently on the padded table, reluctant to let go of her but knowing he had to. "I will wait outside," he said, backing toward the door. "No," Nora said quickly, reaching for his hand. "Please stay. I do not want to be alone." Cole looked at Dr. Martinez, who nodded his approval. "If the lady wishes you to stay, you may stay. Just stand over there and try not to faint on me." Despite the tension of the moment, Cole found himself smiling. "I have seen worse than a few scrapes and bruises, Doc." But as Dr. Martinez began his examination, Cole realized that Nora's injuries were more extensive than he had initially thought. In addition to the obvious cuts and bruises, she had badly abraded skin on her arms and legs from struggling against the rocks, and her feet were blistered and bleeding from walking without proper shoes. Her dress had protected her torso, but the doctor was concerned about possible cracked ribs and internal injuries. Through it all, Nora bore the examination with quiet courage, only crying out when Martinez had to clean the deeper wounds with alcohol. Cole found himself moving closer, offering his hand for her to squeeze, and she gripped it so hard he thought she might break bones. But he did not pull away. "You are a very lucky young woman," Dr. Martinez finally announced. "Nothing is broken, and while you will be sore for several weeks, you should make a full recovery. But you must rest, drink plenty of water, and stay out of the sun for at least a week. Where are you staying in town?" Nora's face fell. "I am not. I was traveling through with my aunt and uncle." "They must be frantic with worry." "I already sent someone to the telegraph office," Cole interjected. "We will get word to them right away, but in the meantime, you need a place to stay." Dr. Martinez stroked his mustache thoughtfully. "My wife and I have a spare room." "You are welcome to stay with us until your family comes for you, Miss Garrett." "I could not impose," Nora protested weakly, but the doctor waved away her objections. "Nonsense. It is settled. Maria will be delighted to have another woman in the house. She complains that I am too serious and need more civilizing influences around me." As if summoned by her name, Maria Martinez appeared in the doorway, a small, round woman with warm brown eyes and a maternal smile. She took one look at Nora and immediately began fussing over her, shooing both Cole and her husband out of the room so she could help Nora into a proper bath and clean clothes. Cole found himself standing on the street outside the doctor's house, feeling strangely bereft without Nora's presence. He needed to get back to the ranch, to report to his boss about the missing calf that he still had not found, but he could not make himself mount his horse and ride away. "You have it bad, my friend," Dr. Martinez said, joining him on the porch with 2 glasses of whiskey. He handed one to Cole and took a sip from his own. "I have seen that look before." "I just met her a few hours ago," Cole protested, but even to his own ears the words sounded weak. "And my Maria and I knew we would marry within 5 minutes of meeting each other." Sometimes the heart knows what the head has not yet figured out. The doctor clapped him on the shoulder. Go send your telegram and take care of your business at the ranch. Come back tomorrow to check on her. She will still be here. Cole nodded and downed his whiskey in one swallow, welcoming the burn. Dr. Martinez was right. He needed to clear his head and think rationally. But as he rode toward the telegraph office, all he could think about was the feeling of Nora in his arms and the way her eyes had looked up at him like he was some kind of hero from a storybook. The telegraph operator, a grizzled old man named Pete who had been sending messages since before the Civil War, took down the information about Nora's rescue and promised to send word to every station between San Elizario and El Paso until they located her family. Cole paid for the messages and added a few extra coins to ensure Pete would give the matter his full attention. By the time Cole made it back to the Double R Ranch, the sun had set, and the stars were beginning to emerge in the vast Texas sky. The ranch house was dark except for a light in the main room, where his boss, Richard Reynolds, was likely going over the books or planning the next day's work. Cole unsaddled his horse, gave him a thorough rub-down and fresh water, then walked across the yard to the main house. He knocked once and entered when he heard Richard's gruff voice call out, "About time you got back, Whitmore. Did you find that calf?" "No, sir. I got sidetracked with a rescue." Cole proceeded to tell his boss about finding Nora in the canyon, and with each word, he saw Richard's expression soften. Richard Reynolds was a hard man, shaped by years of running a successful ranch in unforgiving territory, but he had a soft spot for hard luck cases and acts of heroism. By the time Cole finished his story, Richard was nodding approvingly. "You did the right thing, son. A calf can be replaced, but a human life cannot. Take tomorrow off and go check on the girl. Make sure she is being properly cared for." "Thank you, sir, but I can work tomorrow. I have already lost enough time today." "That was not a suggestion, Whitmore. It was an order. Besides, your head will not be in the work anyway if you are worrying about her." Richard's weathered face cracked into a rare smile. "And if she is as pretty as you keep not mentioning, I expect you will be wanting to spend some time getting to know her before her family drags her off to El Paso." Cole felt his face heat up again, something that seemed to be happening with alarming frequency today. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to anyone with eyes," Richard chuckled. "Now get some rest. You look like you have been dragged behind a horse." Cole retreated to the small cabin he shared with two other ranch hands, both of whom were already snoring in their bunks. He stripped off his dusty clothes, washed himself with water from the basin, and collapsed onto his bed. But despite his exhaustion, sleep eluded him. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Nora's face looking up at him from between those rocks, heard her voice saying he was the answer to her prayers. He had saved people before, pulled a child from a flooding river once, and helped fight a fire that threatened to destroy half of San Elizario last summer. But this felt different. This felt personal in a way he could not quite explain. It was as if finding Nora had awakened something in him that had been dormant for years, a longing for connection and purpose beyond the daily routine of ranch work. When dawn finally broke, Cole had maybe slept 2 hours, but he was wide awake and restless. He dressed quickly in his cleanest shirt and pants, combed his hair, and even trimmed his beard, an act that earned him teasing looks from his bunkmates. "Got a sweetheart in town now, Cole?" one of them called out as he headed for the door. "Maybe," Cole replied, surprised by his own honesty. "Maybe I do." He saddled a fresh horse and made the ride into San Elizario at a pace that was probably too fast for the morning heat. The town was just coming to life when he arrived, shopkeepers opening their doors, women heading to the market with baskets over their arms, children chasing each other through the dusty streets. Cole tied his horse outside the Martinez house and knocked on the door. Maria answered, her face breaking into a warm smile when she saw him. "Mr. Whitmore, how kind of you to check on our guest. Come in, come in. She is much better this morning, though still very sore." Cole followed Maria through the house to a small courtyard in the back, where Nora sat in the shade of a mesquite tree. She wore a simple white dress that Maria must have lent her, and her hair was clean and braided down her back. Despite the bruises on her face and arms, she looked radiant in the morning light. "Cole," she said, her face lighting up when she saw him. She started to rise, but he quickly moved to her side and gently pressed her back into the chair. "Do not get up. Dr. Martinez said you need to rest." "I have done nothing but rest since yesterday evening," Nora protested, but there was a smile in her voice. "I am going mad with boredom already, and Maria will not let me help with anything." "Because you are a guest and injured," Maria said firmly, bringing out a tray with coffee and sweet rolls. "And because you need to conserve your strength. Your family will be here soon and they will want to see you healthy and whole." At the mention of her family, some of the light left Nora's eyes and Cole felt a pang of concern. "What is wrong? Are you worried about seeing them?" Nora sighed and took a sip of coffee before answering. "My aunt and uncle are good people, and they took me in when I had nowhere else to go. But they are also very proper and have strict ideas about what a young woman should and should not do. When I wandered off from the wagon train, I disobeyed their direct instructions to stay close. I am afraid they will be more angry than relieved." "They will just be glad you are alive," Cole assured her, though he had a sinking feeling that she was probably right. He had met plenty of people who valued obedience over independence, and they rarely changed their minds easily. They talked for over an hour, with Maria bringing more coffee and eventually excusing herself to give them privacy, though Cole suspected she was watching from the kitchen window. He told Nora about the ranch, about the work he did, and the life he had built in San Elizario over the past 5 years. She listened intently, asking questions that showed genuine interest rather than polite attention. In turn, Nora told him more about her life in St. Louis, about the books she loved to read and her secret dream of becoming a teacher. But her parents had needed her help with the family business, a small bookshop, and after their deaths, she had no means to support herself. Her aunt and uncle's offer to take her in had seemed like the only option, even though it meant leaving everything familiar behind. "Sometimes I wonder if I made the right choice," Nora admitted quietly. "My aunt already has plans to introduce me to eligible bachelors in El Paso, men of good standing and character who can provide for me. But I do not want to be provided for like I am some kind of pet. I want a partnership, someone who sees me as an equal." Cole reached across the small table between them and took her hand. "Any man worth his salt would be lucky to have you as a partner, Miss Garrett. You are brave, intelligent, and strong. Do not settle for less than you deserve." Nora's eyes met his, and in that moment, Cole knew with absolute certainty that he was falling in love with her. It was insane, impossible, and completely illogical, but it was also undeniable. "Cole, Nora began, but whatever she was about to say was interrupted by the sound of horses and a wagon pulling up in front of the house. Voices rose in urgent inquiry, and then the front door burst open. "Nora, Nora, where is she?" A woman's voice, high-pitched with distress, echoed through the house. Nora's hand tightened on Cole's for just a moment before she released it and stood up, wincing slightly at the movement. "I am out here, Aunt Judith," she called out. A tall, thin woman in a severe black traveling dress appeared in the courtyard doorway, followed by a balding man with a pinched expression. These must be the aunt and uncle, and from their faces, Cole could tell that their relief at finding Nora safe was already being overtaken by anger. "Nora Elizabeth Garrett," Aunt Judith said, her voice trembling. "Do you have any idea what you put us through? We thought you were dead, killed by outlaws or wild animals. The entire wagon train had to stop searching for you yesterday afternoon because we could not delay any longer. We had to continue on to El Paso and send men back to look for you. I am sorry, Aunt Judith. I truly am. I was only trying to find Mother's locket." "That foolish locket," the uncle, whose name Cole did not yet know, said sharply. "You risked your life and put everyone to a great deal of trouble and expense for a piece of jewelry. What were you thinking?" Cole felt his temper rise at the man's harsh tone. "Now hold on just a minute. Your niece nearly died out there. She was trapped for over a day with no water in the August heat. Maybe a little compassion is in order before you start laying blame." Both the aunt and uncle turned to look at Cole as if seeing him for the first time. Aunt Judith's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "And who might you be, young man?" "Cole Whitmore, madam. I am the one who found Miss Garrett and brought her back to town." The uncle's expression softened slightly. "Then we owe you a debt of gratitude, Mr. Whitmore. Thank you for rescuing our niece. We will of course reimburse you for any expenses you incurred." The offer of money stung, reducing his actions to a mere transaction, but Cole held his tongue. These were Nora's relatives, and alienating them would only make things harder for her. "That will not be necessary, sir. I am just glad I was in the right place at the right time." Aunt Judith had moved to Nora's side and was examining her with a critical eye. "You look dreadful, child. We must get you cleaned up and presentable before we return to El Paso. What will people think?" "She has been cleaned up," Maria said, appearing from the kitchen with a martial light in her eyes. "She has also been examined by my husband, who is an excellent physician. She needs rest and care, not to be dragged on a long journey to El Paso." "And you are?" Aunt Judith asked imperiously. "Maria Martinez. This is my home, and Miss Garrett is my guest until she is well enough to travel. My husband agrees that she should stay here for at least a week before undertaking such a trip." A battle of wills ensued, with Aunt Judith insisting that Nora return with them immediately, and Maria standing firm on the doctor's orders. Cole watched Nora's face grow paler as the argument escalated, and he could see that she was close to tears. "Excuse me," he said loudly, cutting through the argument, "but does anyone care what Miss Garrett wants?" Everyone turned to stare at him, and he felt a momentary surge of panic at his boldness. But then he looked at Nora, who was gazing at him with such gratitude, and something else, something that made his heart race, and he found his courage. "Miss Garrett has been through a terrible ordeal. Maybe we should ask her what she feels capable of doing rather than deciding for her." Nora cleared her throat. "I would like to stay here and recover for a few days if Mrs. Martinez will have me. I do not feel strong enough to travel yet." Aunt Judith looked like she wanted to protest further, but the uncle placed a hand on her arm. "Very well. We will return to El Paso and send a wagon for you in 1 week. But Nora, this is your last chance. When you come to El Paso, you will follow our rules and behave as a proper young lady should. No more foolish adventures." "Yes, Uncle Frederick," Nora said quietly, her eyes downcast. The aunt and uncle left shortly after, though not before extracting promises from Dr. Martinez that Nora would be kept safe and properly chaperoned. The moment they were gone, Nora sagged back into her chair, looking exhausted. "Thank you," she said to Cole, "for speaking up for me. No one has done that in a long time." "They are just worried about you," Cole said, though privately he thought the aunt and uncle were more concerned about appearances and inconvenience than Nora's actual well-being. "They are worried about what to do with me," Nora corrected. "I am a burden to them, another mouth to feed, another person to find a suitable match for so I can be someone else's responsibility." "You are not a burden," Cole said fiercely. "Do not ever think that." Over the next week, Cole found excuses to visit Nora every day. Sometimes he brought gifts, wildflowers he had picked on the way into town, or a book he thought she might enjoy. Other times, he simply sat with her in the courtyard, talking about everything and nothing. Nora grew stronger each day, the bruises fading from purple to yellow, the cuts healing into thin pink lines. But more than her physical recovery, Cole watched her spirit return. Away from her aunt and uncle's oppressive expectations, she bloomed like a desert flower after rain. She laughed freely, shared her opinions without hesitation, and began to talk about dreams she had kept locked away. "Sometimes I think about just running away," she confessed one evening as they watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and red. "Getting on a train and going somewhere no one knows me, where I can be whoever I want to be." "Where would you go?" Cole asked, even though the thought of her leaving made his chest tighten painfully. "I do not know. Maybe California. I have heard there are opportunities there for women, that it is less rigid than back east." She turned to look at him, her green eyes reflecting the dying light. "What about you? If you could go anywhere, do anything, what would you choose?" Cole was silent for a long moment, considering the question seriously. "I used to think I wanted to keep drifting, see everything there was to see. But lately, I have been thinking that maybe the secret is not finding the right place, but finding the right person to be with. Someone who makes wherever you are feel like home." The air between them seemed to crackle with unspoken words. Nora opened her mouth to respond, but Maria appeared with dinner, and the moment passed. But Cole saw the way Nora's hand trembled slightly as she reached for her glass, and he knew she felt it too, this impossible connection that had formed between them in such a short time. On the 6th day of Nora's recovery, Cole took her on a short walk through the town plaza. She was still not supposed to exert herself too much, but Dr. Martinez had agreed that a gentle stroll would be good for her. They walked slowly, arm in arm, drawing smiles from the townspeople who had heard the story of the rescue and were charmed by the romance of it all. They stopped in front of the old mission, its adobe walls golden in the afternoon sun. The mission had been built over 100 years ago by Spanish priests, and it still served as the town's church, though it was showing its age. "It is beautiful," Nora said, studying the simple but elegant architecture. "There is something peaceful about old places like this, do you not think? As if all the prayers said within those walls have soaked into the very stones." "I never thought about it that way, but you are right," Cole agreed. He looked down at her, at the way the sun caught the dark waves of her hair and cast her face in soft shadow, and he felt a surge of emotion so strong it nearly knocked him off his feet. "Nora, I need to tell you something." She looked up at him expectantly, and he saw in her eyes that she already knew what he was going to say. But before he could speak, a commotion erupted near the edge of town. Gunshots rang out, followed by shouts and the thunder of horses' hooves. Cole instinctively pulled Nora behind him, his hand going to the revolver at his hip. 3 riders came tearing down the main street, firing their weapons in the air and whooping like demons. They were clearly drunk, and from the look of their clothes and the wild way they rode, they were either outlaws or cowboys on a spree, neither of which boded well for the town's peace. "Get inside the mission," Cole ordered Nora, but she shook her head stubbornly. "Not without you." "Nora, please. I cannot focus on stopping them if I am worried about you." Reluctantly, she ducked into the mission entrance, but Cole could feel her eyes on him as he walked out into the street. The riders had stopped in front of the saloon and were demanding whiskey. The barkeeper, a sensible man named Tom, was trying to calm them down, but it was clear the situation was escalating. Cole approached slowly, his hands visible and away from his gun. "Gentlemen, you are welcome to drink and enjoy yourselves, but there is no need for shooting. We have families and children in this town." The leader of the group, a burly man with a scar across his cheek, turned bloodshot eyes on Cole. "And who the hell are you to tell us what to do? Just a concerned citizen. Put the guns away, have your drinks, and everyone can go home happy." For a moment, Cole thought the man might actually back down. But then one of his companions, a younger fellow with mean eyes, sneered and said, "I do not take orders from no broken-down cowboy. Maybe we should teach you some manners." The young man's hand moved toward his gun, and Cole reacted on instinct. He drew and fired in one smooth motion, shooting the gun out of the young man's hand. The man yelped and clutched his stinging fingers, staring in shock at his fallen weapon. "Like I said, put the guns away," Cole repeated calmly, though his heart was pounding. "Or the next shot will not be a warning." The leader looked between Cole's steady hand and his injured companion, then slowly holstered his own weapon. "Come on, boys. This town is not worth the trouble. Let us go find somewhere more hospitable." The three riders turned and galloped out of town, leaving a cloud of dust and a relieved population in their wake. Tom the barkeeper came out and shook Cole's hand enthusiastically. "That was some mighty fine shooting, Cole. You saved us a heap of trouble there." But Cole barely heard him. He was already turning back toward the mission, where Nora had emerged and was running toward him, her face pale with fear. She threw herself into his arms, and he held her tightly, feeling her heart racing against his chest. "I thought you were going to be killed," she whispered into his shirt. "When he went for his gun, I thought I was going to watch you die, and I realized I could not bear it. Cole, I have only known you for 6 days, but I cannot imagine my life without you in it." Cole pulled back just enough to look at her face, and what he saw there gave him courage. "I love you, Nora Garrett. I know it is crazy, and I know we barely know each other, but I love you. I think I started falling in love with you the moment I saw your hand reaching up from between those rocks." Tears spilled down Nora's cheeks, but she was smiling. "I love you too. You are the answer to my prayers in more ways than one. You did not just save my life, Cole. You reminded me that I deserve more than just survival. You made me believe in possibilities again." Cole cupped her face in his hands and kissed her, right there in the middle of the town plaza, with half of San Elizario watching and cheering. It was not a gentle kiss, not tentative or questioning. It was a kiss full of promise and passion, and the kind of certainty that comes once in a lifetime if you are lucky. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Nora laughed through her tears. "What are we going to do? My aunt and uncle are coming for me tomorrow." "Then I suppose I had better talk to your uncle tonight," Cole said firmly. "Because I am not letting you go to El Paso to be married off to some stranger. You are going to marry me if you will have me." "Are you proposing to me?" Nora asked, her eyes wide. "I am. I know I do not have much to offer. I am just a ranch hand with a little money saved up and a whole lot of hope. But I will work hard for you, Nora. I will build you a home and support your dreams, whatever they might be. I will be your partner, not your keeper. What do you say?" "I say yes," Nora replied without hesitation. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." Cole kissed her again, then took her hand and led her back to the Martinez house. They found Dr. Martinez and Maria in the courtyard, and from the knowing smiles on their faces, it was clear they had been watching the entire scene from their window. "We want to get married," Cole announced. "As soon as possible. But first, I need to speak with Mr. Frederick Garrett and ask for his blessing." Dr. Martinez stood and clasped Cole's shoulder. "You are a good man, Cole Whitmore. You will make her happy, I think, but her uncle, he may not see it that way. He had other plans for Nora. I know, but I have to try. Nora deserves to have her family's blessing, even if she does not need their permission." That evening, when Uncle Frederick and Aunt Judith arrived at the Martinez house for dinner, Cole was waiting. He had washed, shaved, and dressed in his best clothes, and he had spent the afternoon rehearsing what he would say. But when the moment came, all his practiced words flew out of his head, and he simply spoke from the heart. "Mr. Garrett, Mrs. Garrett, I would like to ask for Nora's hand in marriage." The silence that followed was deafening. Uncle Frederick's face turned red, then purple, and Aunt Judith looked like she might faint. But before either of them could respond, Nora stepped forward. "I have already accepted his proposal," she said clearly. "I love Cole and he loves me. We want your blessing, but with or without it, we are going to be married." "This is ridiculous," Uncle Frederick sputtered. "You have known this man for less than a week. You know nothing about him, his family, his prospects." "I know that he is kind, brave, and honorable," Nora replied. "I know that he sees me as a person, not a burden or a duty. And I know that I would rather spend my life with him in a one-room cabin than in a mansion with someone who does not love me." Aunt Judith found her voice. "Nora, dear, you are not thinking clearly. This is just gratitude talking. He saved your life, and you have confused that with love. In time, you will realize your mistake." "This is not gratitude," Nora said firmly. "This is love. Real, true love. The kind of love you and Uncle Frederick had when you were young, before life and propriety wore it down to mere tolerance." The aunt flinched as if she had been struck, and Uncle Frederick's expression shifted from anger to something more complex. He looked at his wife, then at Nora, and finally at Cole. "Can you provide for her?" he asked, his voice heavy with resignation. "A wife needs a home security." "I can, sir. I have money saved, and I am a hard worker. Richard Reynolds, the owner of the Double R Ranch, has already offered me a foreman position with higher pay and a house on the property. It is not a grand estate, but it is a good, solid home, and Nora wants to teach. San Elizario needs a school teacher, and the town council has been talking about hiring one. Together, we can build a good life." Uncle Frederick was silent for a long time, his eyes searching Cole's face for any sign of deception or weakness. Finally, he sighed deeply. "I can see that Nora has made up her mind, and I know my niece well enough to understand that she will not be swayed once she has decided on a course of action. You have my blessing, Mr. Whitmore, though I pray you both know what you are doing." It was not the most enthusiastic endorsement, but it was enough. Nora hugged her uncle tightly, and even Aunt Judith managed a weak smile, though she looked like she had just witnessed the end of civilization as she knew it. The wedding was arranged for the following Sunday, giving Cole and Nora exactly 1 week to prepare. It was not much time, but neither of them wanted to wait any longer than necessary. The entire town threw themselves into the preparations with an enthusiasm that touched both bride and groom deeply. Maria Martinez took charge of Nora's wedding dress, altering one of her own from her wedding day over 20 years ago. The women of San Elizario contributed lace, ribbons, and pearls until the simple dress was transformed into something beautiful. Nora looked radiant when she tried it on, her eyes shining with happiness. Meanwhile, Cole worked with Richard Reynolds to prepare the foreman's house. It was a small structure, just 3 rooms and a covered porch, but it was sturdily built and had a good roof. The ranch hands helped him whitewash the walls, repair the shutters, and build some basic furniture. Richard's wife, Catherine, contributed curtains, dishes, and linens, along with a quilt she had been working on for years. "Every home needs a good quilt," she told Cole as she handed it over. "And every marriage needs patience, humor, and the willingness to forgive. Remember that, and you will do just fine." The days flew by in a flurry of activity and anticipation. Cole barely saw Nora during that week, as tradition and propriety dictated they should spend the time apart. But every night he lay in his bunk thinking about her, counting the hours until she would be his wife. On the morning of the wedding, Cole woke before dawn, too nervous to sleep. He bathed, dressed in a new suit that Richard had insisted on buying him as a wedding gift, and rode into town just as the sun was rising. The mission was already bustling with activity as people decorated the interior with wildflowers and candles. Father Miguel, the mission's elderly priest, found Cole pacing nervously outside. "My Hijo, you look like a man about to face a firing squad rather than marry the woman you love. Calm yourself. Everything will be perfect." "What if I am not good enough for her, Father?" Cole asked, voicing the fear that had been gnawing at him for days. "What if I cannot make her happy?" Father Miguel smiled kindly. "The fact that you are worried about that tells me you are exactly the right man for her. Love is not about being perfect, Cole. It is about showing up every day and trying your best, even when you fail. It is about forgiveness, growth, and choosing each other again and again. You can do that, yes. Yes, Father, I can do that." The church began to fill with townspeople, ranch hands, and even a few travelers who had heard about the wedding and wanted to witness it. Uncle Frederick and Aunt Judith sat in the front row, looking somewhat uncomfortable but present nonetheless. Richard and Catherine Reynolds sat across from them, beaming with pride. Then the church bells began to ring, and everyone stood. Cole turned toward the entrance, and his breath caught in his throat. Nora stood in the doorway, backlit by the morning sun, looking like an angel descended to earth. The altered dress fit her perfectly, flowing over her curves and catching the light as she moved. Her hair was loose, falling in dark waves down her back, with small white flowers woven through it. But it was her smile, radiant and full of love, that made Cole's eyes sting with tears. Dr. Martinez, who had agreed to walk her down the aisle since she had no father to do it, offered Nora his arm. They processed slowly down the aisle while the small church organ played a wedding march. Cole could not take his eyes off her, and she looked only at him, as if they were the only two people in the world. When they reached the altar, Dr. Martinez placed Nora's hand in Cole's and whispered, "Take care of her, my friend. She is precious." "I will. I promise." Father Miguel began the ceremony, his voice warm and resonant in the small church. Cole barely heard the words, too focused on Nora's face, on the feel of her hand in his, on the reality that in just a few minutes she would be his wife. When it came time for the vows, his voice was steady and sure. "I, Cole Whitmore, take you, Nora Garrett, to be my lawfully wedded wife. I promise to love you, honor you, and stand by your side through whatever life brings us. I promise to be your partner, your friend, and your greatest supporter. From this day forward, you will never face anything alone." Nora's voice trembled slightly with emotion as she recited her vows, but her words were clear and heartfelt. "I, Nora Garrett, take you, Cole Whitmore, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to love you, cherish you, and build a life with you filled with joy and purpose. I promise to be your partner, your confidant, and your home. You saved my life, and now I give it to you freely, knowing it will be treasured." Father Miguel blessed their union and declared them husband and wife. "You may kiss your bride." Cole cupped Nora's face tenderly and kissed her with all the love and promise he felt in his heart. The church erupted in cheers and applause, and when they finally broke apart, Both were crying and laughing at the same time. The celebration that followed was unlike anything San Elizario had seen in years. Tables were set up in the plaza, laden with food that everyone had contributed. There was music and dancing, toasts and speeches, laughter and joy. Even Uncle Frederick seemed to relax as the day wore on, and Aunt Judith admitted to Maria that perhaps she had been too harsh in her initial judgment of Cole. As the sun began to set, Cole and Nora slipped away from the celebration and rode out to their new home at the Double R Ranch. The little house looked warm and inviting in the evening light, and Cole felt a surge of pride as he helped Nora down from the wagon. "Welcome home, Mrs. Whitmore," he said, sweeping her up in his arms and carrying her over the threshold. Nora laughed, her arms around his neck. "I love the sound of that, Mrs. Whitmore. It makes it all feel real." Cole set her down gently in the middle of their small parlor. "It is real, Nora. You are mine and I am yours for the rest of our lives." That night, they lay in their new bed, holding each other close and talking quietly about their dreams for the future. Nora wanted to apply for the teaching position and start a school for the children of San Elizario and the surrounding ranches. Cole wanted to save enough money to eventually buy a small piece of land where they could build a bigger house and maybe run a few head of cattle on their own. "We can do all of that," Nora said softly, her head resting on his chest. "We can do anything as long as we are together." "Together," Cole agreed, kissing the top of her head. "Always together." The first months of their marriage were a period of adjustment and discovery. Nora did apply for the teaching position and was hired immediately, much to her delight. She threw herself into the work with passion, teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic to children ranging from 6 to 16. Some of the older boys were nearly as big as she was, but she commanded respect through her intelligence, fairness, and genuine care for her students. Cole took on his new responsibilities as foreman with equal dedication. He managed the ranch hands, organized the work, and proved himself to be a natural leader. Richard Reynolds quickly came to rely on him for important decisions, and the ranch prospered under their combined management. But the best part of each day was when Cole would ride home to find Nora waiting for him, usually with books and papers spread across their small kitchen table, as she prepared lessons for the next day. They would eat dinner together, talking about their days, sharing small victories and frustrations. Then they would sit on the porch and watch the stars emerge, content in each other's presence. One evening in early December, about 5 months after their wedding, Nora had something important to tell Cole. She had been feeling unwell for several weeks, and Maria Martinez had confirmed what Nora had suspected. "Cole, I am with child," she said simply, watching his face for his reaction. For a moment, Cole just stared at her, processing the information. Then a smile spread across his face, growing wider and wider until he was grinning like a fool. He picked Nora up and spun her around, laughing with pure joy. "We are going to be parents," he said, his voice full of wonder. "I am going to be a father and you are going to be a mother." "Are you happy?" Nora asked, though she could see the answer in his eyes. "Happy does not begin to cover it. I am thrilled, terrified, and grateful all at once. When? Dr. Martinez thinks sometime in late May or early June. We have time to prepare." That night, they talked late into the evening about names, about how they would manage Nora's teaching with a baby, about all the ways their lives were about to change. Cole placed his hand on Nora's still flat stomach and marveled at the life growing there, the physical manifestation of their love. The winter passed peacefully. And as Nora's pregnancy progressed, the entire community rallied around them. The women held a quilting bee and made blankets and clothes for the baby. The men expanded the little house, adding a proper bedroom so the baby could have the small room Nora and Cole had been using. Even Uncle Frederick and Aunt Judith sent a package of baby supplies from El Paso, along with a letter saying they planned to visit once the child was born. Nora continued teaching until April, when Dr. Martinez finally insisted she stop and rest. She was frustrated at having to leave her students, but she found other ways to keep busy, sewing tiny clothes and preparing their home for the new arrival. On a warm evening in early June, Nora's labor began. Cole rode into town at breakneck speed to fetch Dr. Martinez and Maria, then paced outside their bedroom while the women attended to his wife. Every cry of pain from Nora felt like a knife to his heart, but Maria kept assuring him that everything was progressing normally. Finally, as dawn broke on a beautiful June morning, the cry of a baby filled the house. Dr. Martinez emerged, his face weary but smiling. "You have a son, Cole. A big, healthy boy, and Nora is tired but doing well. You can go in now." Cole burst into the bedroom to find Nora propped up against pillows, her hair damp with sweat and her face exhausted but radiant. In her arms was a tiny bundle wrapped in a soft blue blanket, and when Cole approached, she pulled back the fabric to reveal a perfect, beautiful baby boy. "Meet your son," Nora said softly. "What should we name him?" Cole reached out with a trembling finger to touch the baby's impossibly small hand, and the infant's fingers immediately curled around his. The feeling that surged through Cole at that moment was indescribable, a love so fierce and protective that it brought tears to his eyes. "Samuel," he said, thinking of the doctor who had cared for Nora so well. "Samuel Richard, after Dr. Martinez and Mr. Reynolds, if that is acceptable to you." "It is perfect," Nora agreed, looking down at their son with wonder. "Samuel Richard Whitmore, welcome to the world, little one. You are so loved." The early weeks with a newborn were exhausting and overwhelming, filled with sleepless nights and the constant worry that they were doing everything wrong. But they learned together, supporting each other through the difficult moments and celebrating every small milestone. Samuel was a good baby, healthy and strong, with his father's dark hair and his mother's green eyes. Life settled into a new rhythm. Nora returned to teaching part-time when Samuel was 3 months old, taking the baby with her to school. The children were delighted to have an infant in the classroom, and took turns helping care for him, learning responsibility and gentleness in the process. Cole continued to excel in his work, and when Richard Reynolds decided to retire 2 years later, he offered Cole the opportunity to buy the ranch at a very favorable price. It was a huge risk, requiring them to use all their savings and take on significant debt, but it was also the opportunity of a lifetime. "What do you think?" Cole asked Nora as they discussed the offer late one night. "It is a big gamble, and if we fail, we could lose everything. But if we succeed, we will have something real to pass on to Samuel and any other children we might have," Nora pointed out. "I believe in you, Cole. I believe in us. Let us take the risk." So Cole became the owner of what they rechristened the Whitmore Ranch, and through hard work, smart management, and a little bit of luck, they made it thrive. They expanded the herd, improved the land, and became respected members of the community. 2 years after Samuel's birth, Nora gave birth to a daughter they named Catherine Maria, after Catherine Reynolds and Maria Martinez. 3 years after that, another son arrived, whom they named Thomas. Their family was complete, and their home was filled with love, laughter, and the beautiful chaos that comes with raising 3 children. Nora never gave up teaching, finding ways to balance her passion for education with her responsibilities as a mother and ranch owner's wife. She became known throughout the region as an excellent teacher, and many of her students went on to achieve things that would have been impossible without the education she provided. Cole proved himself to be not just a skilled rancher, but also a fair and compassionate employer. He paid his ranch hands well, treated them with respect, and created a working environment where people wanted to stay. The Whitmore Ranch became known as one of the best places to work in the territory. As the years passed, Cole and Nora's love only deepened. They faced challenges, of course. There were droughts that threatened the ranch, illnesses that scared them, and the normal conflicts that arise in any marriage. But they kept the promise they had made to each other on their wedding day, choosing each other again and again, working through problems together, and never letting a day end in anger. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Cole took Nora on a ride out to Red Rock Canyon, to the spot where he had found her all those years ago. The boulders were still there, unchanged by time, silent witnesses to the miracle that had brought them together. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I had not been looking for that calf that day?" Cole asked as they stood looking at the rocks. "If I had gone a different direction, or if you had not dropped your mother's locket?" Nora leaned against him, his arm around her waist. "I try not to think about it because it frightens me, but I also believe that somehow we would have found each other. Maybe not that day or in that way, but eventually. Some things are just meant to be." "I used to think that was nonsense," Cole admitted. "But after finding you, after everything we have built together, I am starting to think you might be right. You were the answer to my prayers too, Nora, even though I did not know what to pray for until I saw you." Nora turned in his arms and kissed him, the same passion and promise in that kiss as there had been in their first. "Take me home, Cole, to our children, our ranch, our life. I want to see where the next 10 years take us." And so they rode home together, as the sun set over the Texas landscape. Two souls who had found each other against impossible odds and built something beautiful and lasting from that chance encounter in a canyon. 25 years after their wedding, Cole and Nora Whitmore sat on the porch of their ranch house, which had grown over the years to accommodate their expanding family. Samuel was married now, with 2 children of his own, and had taken over the day-to-day operations of the ranch. Catherine had become a doctor, inspired by Dr. Martinez, and ran a medical practice in San Elizario with her physician husband. Thomas was studying law in Austin, with plans to return and serve the community that had raised him. Cole's hair had gone silver, and Nora's dark waves were streaked with gray, but they still held hands as they watched the sunset, still found new things to talk about after all these years, still looked at each other with love and gratitude. "You have any regrets?" Nora asked, a question they had asked each other many times over the years. "Not a single one," Cole replied, the same answer he always gave. "Finding you was the best thing that ever happened to me. Everything good in my life started that day in the canyon." "Everything good in my life started when I looked up and saw you," Nora countered. "When I said you were the answer to my prayers, I had no idea how true that would prove to be. You did not just save my life that day, Cole. You gave me a life worth living." As the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, their grandchildren's laughter drifted from inside the house, where they were playing under their parents' watchful eyes. It was a sound that never failed to make both Cole and Nora smile, a reminder of the legacy they had built together. "Tell me the story again, Grandma," their oldest granddaughter, Elizabeth, had asked just that morning. "Tell me about how Grandpa found you in the canyon." And Nora had told the story once more, never tiring of it, watching Cole's eyes as she described that day. The story had become a family legend, passed down and embellished with each telling, but its core remained true, a testament to the power of being in the right place at the right time, and having the courage to recognize love when it appears, even in the most unexpected circumstances. Cole squeezed Nora's hand as they sat together in the gathering darkness, and she squeezed back, a simple gesture that held a world of meaning. They had built a good life, raised good children, contributed to their community, and most importantly, they had kept their promises to each other. Through sickness and health, prosperity and hardship, joy and sorrow, they had remained partners, lovers, and best friends. In the distance, a coyote howled at the rising moon, and somewhere in the darkness, another answered. The desert night came alive with sound and movement, the eternal dance of life under the vast Texas sky. And on their porch, two people who had found each other in a canyon 25 years ago sat together, grateful for every moment, every challenge, every blessing that had brought them to this perfect evening. "I love you, Nora Whitmore," Cole said softly. "I love you too, Cole Whitmore," Nora replied. "Today, tomorrow, and always." And as the last light faded from the sky, they sat together in peaceful silence, their hands still clasped, two hearts beating as one, living proof that sometimes prayers are answered in the most miraculous ways, and that love, when it is true and freely given, can transform not just two lives but generations to come. The end.